All right, welcome. This is a video specifically targeted at our E101 students here at the ISE department, Intelligence Systems Engineering department at Indiana University. But if you might find this interesting on your own, although many of the details here are specific to Indiana University. And that's a note for the students. This won't necessarily work if you've got your Pi off campus. This is kind of an on-campus sort of technique. And so what we are doing here is we're going to try to remotely log into our Raspberry Pi. And we're going to use a tool called SSH. And so SSH is called Secure Shell, which means it's an encrypted tunnel that allows us to connect remotely through the network, and in this case through Wi-Fi, to our Raspberry Pi. So our Raspberry Pi, when you open your box, what you're getting is this Raspberry Pi, and the Pi has on top of it here a sense hat, and the sense hat has some LEDs that'll light up when we power it up, and I'll show you that in a second. It's got an SD card, and that's where your data is going to be stored, at least in the very short time. You definitely want to get your data off of that SD card. These things do fail. And so you definitely want to make sure that you're not storing data on there long term. And we're going to show you how to move data on and off there with a couple of techniques. One of them being Git and GitHub, but there are other techniques, and we'll make future videos on how to do that. But today we're just going to focus on how do you get connected. The other thing I want to highlight to you is this white tag here. This white tag is an IU asset tag that we use here at SAIS. To keep track of assets. And in this case, we're going to use it, we're going to use this number 986257 as part of the name of the machine. And so your number will be different for your Pi. So you'll have to look at what your number is, but it will form part of the name that allows us to log into this machine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to power this thing on. And so you power it on. I've got my, you've got a wall wart here, which is essentially a 5-volt supply. I think these will do like 2.5 amps, something like that. The Raspberry Pi actually draws quite a bit of current. So, so you got your power supply. I've got this other one here plugged in already. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. I want to show you something about the Pi. So when you plug it in, the display should light up. It'll make this nice little rainbow color. But I want you to look at this little red LED here. This red LED says that there's power on the board. If that's flickering, that means there's something wrong with the power. Maybe you've got a bad connector or a bad cable. Talk to your AIs or instructors to figure that out. The green LED is actually the disk activity. And so it's reading from the SD card. And so as the system is booting, it was on pretty continuously green. But as it runs for a little while, it's going to eventually kind of slow down. Probably about a minute in, you can log into the machine. There'll be enough of the core up. So what has to happen is there's a service that will start eventually on the Raspberry Pi that once the Wi-Fi is up and it's got it's gone off to the IU network and it's gotten its IP address. These things have static IP addresses. Then you can get onto the board. All right. So yeah. So that's the idea. So okay. So you've got your Pi, and so again, this is a static IP address, which means that IP address is does not change. And so, like your laptop, or if you've got a phone connected to the network, the IP addresses for those machines, they actually change every time you log in, and sometimes they change in the middle of a session. They're very frequently changing. And so it wouldn't really work for a Pi if we used a dynamic address, because you'd have to go and try to find that address, and that's really tricky, especially when you're talking about wireless. All right, so how do you get access to it? Well, if you're on Windows, the way you're going to do it is you're going to use a tool called PuTTY. And so if I bring up a browser here and I just Google for PuTTY, you'll get, maybe I get the first one because I have gone to it. Let me show you my desktop here. You're going to go and get a tool called PuTTY, and if I go and click on it, download PuTTY. It's a little free SSH telnet. Telnet's kind of the precursor to SSH. Telnet didn't have really any security, so people only use it for use it sparsely today because of its total lack of security. So then you can just download it and install it. And again, this is for Windows users. I'll show you in a second how you might do this if you were on a Mac. I'll show you on a Linux machine, which is going to be very similar to Mac. And so anyway, so you've got it downloaded and installed. Let's say that I've gotten that far. And so on my machine here, I've got it down here in my toolbar down here. So I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. Yeah, there we go. There is my PuTTY window. And so with PuTTY, what you're doing is you're going to give it the name of the machine you want to connect to. And assuming that my Pi has been up long enough, it's going to try to connect to that. So I'm going to type the name of the machine, and all the machines will start with ISE-Pi. And then I need to go back over here, if I go back to my document camera, and grab this number right here. That number is going to be the last part of this. So I'll come back to my desktop here, and I'll type in 986.257. Dot Luddy dot Indiana. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the username Pi at that address, or at that name. And so the Pi is the username at this machine name, which is, again, it's on the Wi-Fi network. It's got a static IP address. So it should, when this goes out to the network, it should ask the network, hey, have you heard of this machine called ISE-Pi-986.257? And it will say, yes, and I have, and it's at this location right now, and here the packets will route to the place that I need to route it to. Okay, so I'm going to say open, and it's going to give me the security alert, and I'm going to say accept. And I'm not going to say what I'm going to type in here, but you can get that from class. I'm not going to put that on YouTube. All right, so now I'm logged in to this machine. And so if I type ls, the sort of, that'll be your first Linux command if you don't know any Linux commands at all. And then if I want to go into one of these directories like E101, I can do cd E101, and I can start moving around. And we'll work on, how to run these Linux commands, what they are in class. That'll be part of what we work on. Now, let's say that you are running from a Mac. Yours is going to look a little different. Yours is going to look much more like a terminal. And so let me do that. So I'm gonna exit PuTTY here. Although I could have more than, maybe I'll show you that. I can have more than one up. So on Windows you'll use PuTTY. On Linux you're going to use, on Mac you're going to use a tool called Terminal. And so Terminal is going to look, Windows' Terminal is not exactly the same, but it's there. Most command line terminals are the same. So I'm going to type SSH, and then I'm going to say Pi at ISE-Pi-986.257.luddy.indiana.edu. And then we'll see if it'll let me in. Yes. And so I'll type in the password. All right. So now I'm in. So on a Mac, it'll be very much like this. The tool is called Terminal. You can use Explorer, it's a Finder to go and find the Terminal tool, put it in your toolbar or whatever. You'll be using it a lot. Because this is how we're going to get in and out of that Raspberry Pi. And we're going to use this to write Python. And so from the command line here, we can fire up an editor, edit some Python, and then run it. And we're going to ultimately use that to control this cool little Sense Hat, which has got a little display. It's got a joystick. It's got some sensors like temperature, humidity. It's got an accelerometer and a gyro, and so you can really kind of do quite a bit with just the Sense Hat. All right, so that's the basic gist of it. So if you're on Linux terminal, you'll use whatever whatever your terminal in Linux. It's so natural to use a terminal that if you're using Linux, almost certainly you will know what terminal, whether it's Bash or there are many different types of terminals. So you'll figure out which one to open when you get on Linux. On Mac, it'll be Terminal. On Windows, it will be PuTTY. PuTTY is the simplest thing to do. Not everybody uses PowerShell, and so the cleanest thing for you to do is to install PuTTY and to get it working through PuTTY. I think that's going to be the easiest way to go. All right, so it's okay. Come back to me. All right, so that is the basics of how you SSH into your Pi. And so we'll talk about it in class. We'll practice it in class, but that's kind of how you get started. Now, anywhere on IU's network, so as long as it can find an IU access point, right? Remember the Pi here is, it's connecting via Wi-Fi, right? There's no wires to this thing. This power wire is just providing 5 volts. So it's connecting via Wi-Fi. So it's got to be able to see an access point, whether that's in a dorm or in an academic building, not just here at Luddy. It's not a Luddy thing per se. It's a thing where anywhere on campus it should work, or any. I presume it might work at IUI as well, but up in Indianapolis. But pretty much anywhere in the IU infrastructure, this should work. It should give you that IP address that is static, and that'll allow you to go at it by that name, right? That name is basically the shorthand, so to speak, for the IP address, which is a number with that looks like four integers, basically separated by dots. So that's the address that allows you to find this anywhere where it's at on the network. All right, so that's it for this video. We'll come back. There'll be more of these to try and help kind of crystallize some of the things that we've talked about in class. If you have problems, don't hesitate to reach out to the instruction staff or to myself or any other lead instructors. We'd be happy to help you. All right. See you at the next one.